The sirens blared through the military compound as Commander James Barrett rushed through the underground facility's sterile corridors. His boots echoed against the metal floors, matching the urgent rhythm of his heartbeat. 20 years in special operations hadn't prepared him for what they detected entering Earth's atmosphere just hours ago. Status report, he barked into his communication device as he approached the central command center. The massive screens before him displayed a series of thermal images, tracking an object that had crashed in the Nevada desert. "Sir, the object appears to be some sort of vessel," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, her fingers flying across the holographic display. "Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. And there's movement." James leaned forward, studying the infrared footage. Something was emerging from the wreckage, something that moved with inhuman grace. "Lock down the perimeter. No one gets within 5 miles of that crash site without my direct authorization." But even as he gave the order, he knew it was too late. The figure had already vanished from their sensors, leaving only the smoking remnants of what appeared to be an alien spacecraft. Hours later, as James sat alone in his office reviewing the footage for the 100th time, the lights flickered. A cold breeze swept through the room, though there were no windows or vents nearby. His combat instincts kicked in immediately, and he reached for his sidearm. "That won't be necessary, Commander Barrett." The voice was melodic, almost hypnotic, with an otherworldly resonance that made the hair on his neck stand up. He turned slowly, weapon raised, to find himself face to face with the most extraordinary being he'd ever seen. She stood tall, her skin a deep midnight blue that seemed to shimmer with constellations. Her eyes were pure silver, lacking pupils or irises, yet somehow expressing an intensity that pierced straight through him. "You are the one I seek," she said, taking a step forward. Her movements were fluid, as though gravity held less sway over her than it did others. "I am Nixis, warrior of the Celestial Guard, and you, James Barrett, are bound to me by forces beyond your comprehension." James kept his weapon steady, though something deep within him resonated with her words. "I'm not bound to anyone or anything except my duty to protect this planet." A smile played at the corners of her iridescent lips. "Your loyalty is admirable, but misplaced. There are greater threats approaching Earth than my presence here. The Void Hunters have already begun their approach, and without our bond, your world stands no chance against them." "The Void Hunters?" James felt a chill run down his spine at the name, though he'd never heard it before. "They devour worlds, Commander. They feast on the essence of civilizations, leaving nothing but hollow shells behind. My people have fought them for millennia, but we're losing. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here." She stepped closer, and James found himself lowering his weapon despite his training. Something about her presence felt familiar, like a memory from a dream he couldn't quite recall. "Our ancestors forged a pact," Nixis continued, her voice softening. "In times of greatest need, a warrior of my people would be bound to a human guardian. Together, they would possess the power to turn back the darkness. You bear the mark, James Barrett, whether you know it or not." As she spoke, James felt a warmth spreading through his chest, and beneath his uniform, a pattern of light began to glow. It matched the constellation-like markings on Nixis's skin perfectly. "This is impossible," he whispered, but even as he spoke the words, he knew they weren't true. Deep down, in a place he'd never acknowledged, he'd always known he was meant for something more than his earthly duties. The facility's alarms suddenly blared to life, and Nixis's expression hardened. "They found us sooner than I expected. The Void Hunters' advanced scouts. Your weapons cannot harm them, James. Only our combined strength stands a chance." Outside, the night sky erupted with streams of dark energy, like negative lightning reaching down from the stars. The choice before him was impossible: trust this alien being who spoke of ancient pacts and cosmic threats, or stand with the organization he'd served faithfully for decades. But as another blast of dark energy rocked the facility, James realized it wasn't really a choice at all. The mark on his chest burned with purpose, and when he looked into Nixus's silver eyes, he saw not an alien warrior, but a kindred spirit bound to him by destiny itself. "What do we do?" he asked, holstering his weapon. Nixus extended her hand, her skin shimming with starlight. "We fight. Together. As we were always meant to. No one else can have you, James Barrett. You're mine, as I am yours, bound by a destiny greater than either of us." As their hands met, energy surged between them, and James Barrett knew his life would never be the same. The war for Earth's survival had begun, and at its heart was a bond that transcended species, space, and time itself. The desert night exploded with dark energy as James and Nixus raced through the compound's underground tunnels. Above them, the screech of Void Hunter scouts tore through the air, their shadowcraft leaving trails of negative light across the sky. "Your people need to evacuate," Nixus said as they reached the facility's vehicle bay. "The scouts are just the beginning. Once they confirm my presence here, they'll send the harvesters." James activated his emergency protocols, sending evacuation orders throughout the base. "What exactly are these harvesters?" "Living weapons," Nixus replied, her silver eyes scanning the darkness. "They drain the life force from entire planets, converting organic matter into void energy. My people have seen them reduce thriving worlds to cosmic husks." An explosion rocked the building above them, sending concrete dust raining down. James felt the mark on his chest pulse in response to Nixus's growing tension. The bond between them was strengthening, allowing him to sense her emotions, her fears. "The mark," he said, touching his chest. "How does it work? What are we supposed to do with it?" Before Nixus could answer, the ceiling burst open. A creature of pure darkness descended, its form constantly shifting like smoke given malevolent purpose. James raised his weapon instinctively, but the bullets passed through the entity harmlessly. "Together!" Nixus shouted, grabbing his hand. Energy surged between them, and suddenly James could see the world through new eyes. The mark on his chest blazed with stellar fire, matching the constellations that danced across Nixus's skin. Acting on instinct, they moved as one. Nixus channeled her cosmic energy through their joined hands while James directed it with military precision. A beam of pure starlight erupted from them, piercing the void creature and causing it to dissipate with an otherworldly shriek. "That's what the bond can do," Nixus said, her voice filled with wonder. "But we've barely scratched the surface of its potential." Their victory was short-lived. More void creatures were pouring in, and through their strengthening connection, James could feel Nixus's growing concern. These weren't just scouts, they were an advance force. "We need to leave Earth," Nixus said, pulling him toward her crashed vessel. "The harvesters will track us, following our bond's energy signature. It's the only way to protect your world." James hesitated. "I can't just abandon my post, my duty." "Your duty now extends beyond Earth," Nixus interrupted, her silver eyes meeting his. "The bond chose us for a reason. Together, we might be the only ones who can stop the Void Hunters from consuming every living world in their path." Another explosion rocked the facility, and James felt the truth of her words in his very being. The mark they shared wasn't just a connection, it was a responsibility, a destiny neither of them could ignore. They fought their way to Nixus's ship, their combined powers growing stronger with each encounter. James found himself moving in perfect synchronization with her, as if they'd trained together for years. When she needed covering fire, he was already providing it. When he needed an opening, she created one. The ship, despite its crash landing, responded to Nixus's touch. Its organic-looking surface rippled and reformed, healing itself as systems came back online. "It's alive," James realized, touching the hull. "All our vessels are," Nixus explained as they boarded. "Grown from stellar seeds, nurtured in the heart of dying stars. They're as much a part of us as our own bodies." As void creatures surrounded the ship, Nixus interfaced with its control system. Living tendrils emerged from the console, connecting with the constellation patterns on her skin. The vessel hummed to life, its interior glowing with the same starlight that marked their bond. "Last chance to stay," Nixis said softly, though James could feel her hope that he wouldn't. Looking back at the base he'd called home for so many years, James made his decision. "Earth has plenty of defenders," he said, taking his place beside her. "But it sounds like the galaxy needs us more." The ship lifted off, its living metal singing with power as it broke through Earth's atmosphere. Through their bond, James could feel Nixis's relief and something else, a growing affection that mirrored his own complicated feelings. As they broke through the atmosphere, James saw his home planet from space for the first time. It looked so fragile, so precious, and he swore he would do whatever it took to protect it from the darkness that pursued them. "Where are we heading?" he asked as Earth grew smaller behind them. "To find answers," Nixis replied, setting a course through the star-streaked void. "There are others like us, other bonded pairs. We need to find them before the Void Hunters do. And we need to understand why our ancestors created these bonds in the first place." As their ship accelerated into faster-than-light travel, James felt the mark on his chest warm with purpose. Whatever lay ahead, whatever dangers they would face them together. The bond between them was no longer just a mysterious connection, it was becoming something more, something that felt startlingly like home. The living starship pulsed with energy as it carried them through the quantum fold of space. James stood at the organic viewport, watching as distant galaxies streaked past like rivers of light. After 3 days in space, he was still adjusting to the reality of his new life. "Your adaptation is remarkable," Nixis said, joining him at the viewport. "Most humans struggle with quantum travel, but you seem almost comfortable with it." "The bond helps," James replied, feeling the familiar warmth in his chest where the mark connected them. "It's like I can feel the ship's rhythm through your connection to it." Nixis smiled, her constellation-marked skin shimming with approval. "The ancient texts speak of this, how the bond allows partners to share not just power, but understanding. You're learning to see the universe as my people do." Their moment of peace was shattered by a proximity alert. The ship's living walls pulsed with warning colors as 3 vessels emerged from the quantum fold behind them. Their surfaces were black as the void itself, seeming to absorb the very light around them. "Void Hunter Pursuit Craft," Nixis said, her silver eyes narrowing. "They're faster than I expected." James felt her concern through their bond, but also her determination. Without words, they moved to the ship's control center, where the living tendrils connected them both to the vessel's systems. Through their shared consciousness, James could see the tactical display as Nixis would, not just positions and vectors, but the very fabric of space itself. "There," he said, pointing to a distortion in the quantum field. "That gravitational eddy, we could use it to create a slingshot effect." Nixis finished his thought, her hands dancing across the organic controls. "Your military training combines well with my stellar navigation." Their ship dove toward a massive binary star system, its living metal adapting to the increasing gravitational forces. The Void Hunters followed, their weapons releasing streams of dark energy that threatened to tear reality itself apart. Working in perfect synchronization, James and Nixis executed their plan. They skimmed the surface of the larger star, using its gravitational pull to accelerate. Through their bond, James could feel the ship strain, feel Nixis's concentration as she calculated their trajectory to the microsecond. The maneuver worked perfectly, too perfectly. As they shot away from the star system at incredible speed, James realized something was wrong. "They wanted us to do that," he said, feeling the truth of it through their connection. "They're hurting us." Nixis's expression confirmed his fears. "Toward the quantum vault," she said grimly. "An ancient structure my people discovered centuries ago. We could never access it, but the texts speak of its importance to the bond." "Then maybe that's where we need to go," James suggested, studying the tactical display. "Spring their trap, but on our terms." Their ship emerged from quantum space near a massive structure that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Its surface was covered in markings similar to those on Nixus's skin and James's chest. But they weren't alone. Waiting for them was a sight that made even Nixus's breath catch, a harvester vessel, massive beyond comprehension, its surface a writhing mass of void energy that hurt the eyes to look at. The texts speak of a test, Nixus said, her voice barely a whisper. When bonded pairs reach the vault, they must prove themselves worthy of its secrets. James felt the mark on his chest grow warm, resonating with the ancient structure before them. Then let's prove ourselves worthy. The harvester vessel launched waves of void creatures, each more terrifying than those they'd faced on Earth. But James and Nixus were ready. Their bond had grown stronger during their journey, and now they moved as one being, their powers perfectly synchronized. James's tactical knowledge merged with Nixus's cosmic abilities as they fought their way toward the vault. Their ship responded to their combined will, dancing through the void creatures' attacks while returning fire with weapons forged from pure starlight. As they approached the ancient structure, its surface began to react to their presence. Symbols identical to their bond marks lit up across its dimensional surface, and a voice that seemed to speak directly into their minds echoed through space. "The worthy return," it said in a language that transcended words. "The bond remains unbroken." A portal opened in the vault's surface, offering sanctuary from the harvester's assault. But as they maneuvered toward it, James felt Nixus's sudden spike of recognition through their bond. "What is it?" he asked, feeling her mixture of hope and fear. "That voice," she said, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "It's from the first bonding, the original human and stellar warrior who created the pact between our peoples. They're still alive, preserved somehow within the vault itself." As their ship passed through the portal, leaving the harvesters behind, James knew they were about to discover truths that would change everything they thought they knew about their bond, their peoples, and their destiny in the cosmic war that lay ahead.